According to supply managers in the 9 Mid-America states, how is the economy performing?
Our survey of supply managers in the 9 Mid-America states, stretching from North Dakota and Minnesota in the north to Oklahoma and Arkansas in the south, the November reading was very strong. Now, it did drop a bit, dropped to 60.2, and that's down from October's even stronger 65.2, both well above growth neutral 50.0. Importantly, 1 out of 4 of the supply managers expect the supply chain delays that we're currently now experiencing to improve in the first half of 2022. More than 50% of the supply chain managers expect these supply chain disruptions, supply chain bottlenecks to get worse in the first half of 2022. Supply chain managers rank transportation delays as the biggest supply chain disruptions, and then next along the line was labor shortages, unloading, loading those transportation vehicles. Also, logistical support was a big issue going forward. Now, let me bring up the graph of the over the last 18 months, and you see there in Creighton blue, you'll see there the index has been coming down for several months now, but still in a growth range. The overall reading for the U.S. will come out later on this morning, and I expect it to be also pretty strong. So both our surveys, the U.S. surveys, are looking or at least pointing to growth in the weeks and months ahead.
What were the hiring trends?
Hiring for the month of November was strong. The November reading was 61.1, which is a good reading, well above growth neutral, but it's down from October's 66.1. Regional employment compared to pre-pandemic levels, about 2.8% below pre-pandemic levels. That'd be February of 2020. The U.S. employment is likewise down about 2.8% from pre-pandemic levels. So the oddity of it is we've got GDP back to above pre-pandemic levels, but employment not there. We're still seeing reluctance to return to work. We've got a lot of retirements. We've got individuals leaving the workforce. So on the employment front, it's still good, but not back to pre-pandemic levels.
What inflation trends are you noticing?
Inflation is still very strong. We're seeing some of the highest numbers we've recorded here at Creighton University since we began the survey more than 25 years ago. I would say it's the most consistent upward price pressures that we've recorded since in the last 3 decades. Almost 2/3 reported deliveries slowed from October. And of course, that's one of the big issues. And transportation is the real big bugaboo facing these companies, facing these manufacturers out there, whether it's getting inputs in or getting outputs out, and also labor as well, continuing to be a real issue. And 14% of the supply managers reported excess demand was the big issue. Another 13% said just-in-time buying was a factor creating these supply chain bottlenecks and delays.
What is the economic outlook?
Unfortunately, the outlook depends heavily on what happens with the South African strain of COVID-19, the variant there that we're now seeing. But even with that, I'm still expecting slower growth in the first half of 2022. It will slow even more, obviously, if the COVID-19 variant, we see that expanding in the U.S. and globally. We're going to see long-term interest rates. If that happens, we'll see lower long-term interest rates. On the flip side, if that is a false alarm, in other words, if we continue to move along with vaccinations expanding, we're going to see higher long-term interest rates. Also, imports and exports will obviously be hurt if the variant, I'll call it the South African variant of COVID-19, if that does expand in the U.S. and of course globally, that would be a real big issue. Going forward, we're going to see higher short-term interest rates in the first half of 2022. But again, that depends on the current situation. That would be the situation in the U.S. and globally, where the I'll call it Southern Africa COVID-19 variant it just does not hit and does not expand, then we're going to see higher short-term interest rates as well. But for the first half of 2022, we're going to see slower growth accompanying that regardless. So unfortunately, we're going to continue to see the economy expanding. It's just going to be at a slower pace. It's going to be well into the 2022 before we're back to pre-pandemic employment levels. But all in all, it was a good report. Could have been better, not as good as we've seen in prior months, but we'll wait and see on January the 3rd when the next report comes out for the month of December. Until then, may your economic cup runneth over.